Hi, my name is Monal Chokshi, and I'm going to talk to you today about structuring your UX research team. Please note that the content I provide is a reflection of my own experiences and beliefs and is not representative of any past employer. So as UX research managers and leaders, we all want our teams to be successful. But what does it mean to be successful? My vision for success for UX research is to have consistent, broad-reaching impact across the company. This means not only driving decisions with the design and product teams, but also influencing the larger business and company strategy. Why? Because we have the skill set to provide user-focused insights to drive impactful decisions across the company, such as improving the design of our products and services, steering product innovation and strategy, and influencing executive decisions for the company. And with a strong UX research team, we can positively affect user satisfaction, retention, and growth for our companies. So my vision for success is the driving force behind this talk. And how we decide to model, structure, and grow our teams can greatly influence that success. Over the last decade, I've had some practice structuring UX research teams. I've had the opportunity to build out UX research disciplines and teams at 2 companies, first at SoundCloud and most recently at Lyft. When I began at SoundCloud in 2013, they were looking for an experienced leader to build out the design research team there. And once there, I was quickly reminded of my days working at tech startups during the dot-com era. Startups are a lot of hard work, and resources are limited. So as SoundCloud's very first researcher and a UX research team of 1, I had to do more with less. I needed to get scrappy, be creative, and make it work, all on my own. And I had to roll up my sleeves and wear many hats in order to establish this new discipline for the company. Eventually, I was able to grow a small team at SoundCloud, but I was unable to fully reach my vision of success, which was to have a consistent, broad-reaching impact across the company. So for my next move, I wanted another chance to grow a team and prove its value within a startup. So when I joined Lyft, I got that opportunity. But this time, I plan to succeed in achieving my vision of having broad-reaching impact for the company. In this talk, I'm going to walk you through my journey at Lyft and what it was like to build a UX research team, which I grew from just myself to 30 people in less than 5 years. First, I'll tell you a little about my situation and the challenges I faced when I started. And then I'll walk you through how we grew by first explaining how UX research teams are modeled today, and then sharing how I grew and modeled the UX research team at Lyft throughout 7 stages of growth. I'll also provide some examples of how other team research leaders have chosen to structure their teams. And finally, I'll close by providing you with some prompts for utilizing 5 key factors which drove my decisions, so you can use them to think about structuring your team, whether you're at a team of 1 or many, at any time throughout your career trajectory. So here's a quick preview of the 5 factors that are going to come up throughout my talk. The first factor is expectations of UX research. This centers around understanding others' perceptions of UX research in order to gauge our alignment with them. The second is collaboration and work processes and determining how to best integrate research and insights into our work. And the third factor is the company's organizational structure and understanding the dynamics of influence that are at play. The fourth is leadership and their buy-in to UX research and gauging our credibility and value overall in their eyes. And finally, the last factor is company culture and understanding how user-centric the team members' mindsets are. So be sure to keep an eye out for these themes as we go. Okay, let's start by diving into my Lyft journey. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Lyft is a transportation company well known today for its ride-sharing business. It currently operates throughout the US and Canada. And when I joined Lyft in 2015, We were best known as the rideshare service that donned these funky car stashes. Little was known about where we, just a small, scrappy startup of about 300 people, were headed. I was hired to create the discipline of UX research at Lyft and to build a world-class team of researchers. So to have the opportunity to do this again was exciting, but I knew I had my work cut out for me. I had several challenges to overcome in order to reach my vision of having consistent, broad-reaching impact across the company. And these challenges are common at many startups. The first challenge in reaching my vision was that UX research at Lyft was not well understood back then. Expectations for what UXR would do were quite narrow in scope. So when I was hired by Lyft's lovely and very talented design team. But their expectation primarily was for research to provide evaluative user feedback for their design work. And Lyft leadership also thought of UX research more as a tactical service to the design team rather than a cross-functional product team partner or strategic business partner. So overall, when I began at Lyft, our realm of expected influence was relatively small, and there was a large gap between us and our executive leadership. Another big challenge was that although the company culture and vision was very much focused on our users, there was no significant user research practices or formal user insights in place yet. So in true startup style, our product teams worked on very fast timelines, which didn't include research. And our leadership focused primarily on the day-to-day numbers when making decisions. So we would need to come in and change work processes and team member behavior in order to be successful. And finally, similar to the challenge I faced at SoundCloud, I had no budget and no headcount to build the discipline or team at first. As an early startup, we had to stay scrappy to survive, especially since our main competitor was several times larger than us and had much more funding and resources. So I sought a strategy for how to accomplish my vision for success and to ensure that UX research had broad-reaching impact across the company. To do so, I would need to figure out how to expand expectations for UX research, how to increase our realm of influence, and also how to be more visible to leadership. And I had lots of questions for myself, such as, where do I start? Where should UX research focus? And what's the best way to model and structure our team for success? That said, I've seen 3 common work models for how UX research teams are structured, each with their pros and cons. The first is an embedded model. Many large UX research teams work this way, as they have enough researchers to be dedicated to cross-functional product teams alongside product managers and designers for a specific area. And the main advantage to this model is the researcher's ability to ensure for research all along the way, building up domain and user expertise. This model may also lead to greater job satisfaction as researchers get to feel ownership and be a partner. They also get to have a say and help influence team decisions. So the main caution for embedded models is to avoid becoming siloed and to ensure for a more holistic research practice as well. The second model is a centralized service or agency model. And in this case, typically the team manager will prioritize all the team requests and then assign team members projects to work on. Stakeholders typically vary with each project. So the main advantage to a service model is the ability to always focus on the highest priority projects across the teams that you serve. Now, the challenge is that it can often be difficult to prioritize across multiple teams' high priority requests and needs. And as we all know, teams have a lot of high priority requests. So it might be more difficult for team members to build relationships and have sustained influence as stakeholders can change with each project. Okay, and finally, we have the democratized model. And in this model, researchers focus on helping non-researchers do research themselves. And the primary advantage to a democratized model is to be able to offload some of the UX research requests that we get. And this allows researchers to free up some time for higher priority and more advanced research work. So one major challenge to a successful democratized model is ensuring that stakeholders are always bought into doing their own research and willing to take the time to do it. And then UX research should ensure the proper infrastructure and resources to train and advise the non-researchers to do their own studies, and also to help provide access to participants and protocols, and hopefully ensure an adequate quality bar for that work. So, coming back now to my journey at Lyft, I knew I wanted to grow a UX research team from the start, and I'd been thinking about that and how to model our work and processes. And I asked myself, what would allow us to reach my vision of having broad-reaching impact? Given our very fast-working culture, highly collaborative team processes, and user-focused company culture, I figured we would be most successful growing the UX research team in either an embedded or democratized fashion. So at SoundCloud, I chose to implement a democratized model for UX research at first. And the overall pace of work at SoundCloud provided ample time and learning to allow for learning and implementing research into team members' work practices. However, we faced some additional challenges at Lyft. First, our designers were already a bit stretched, and they really wanted to focus primarily on their design craft, which is why they hired research. Also, our cross-functional product teams were moving at light speed, and they were really hard-pressed to make the time to do their own research. So I believe that initially a democratized model probably wouldn't have worked that well. And I thought obviously we're too small to be embedded right away. So we'd likely need to start out working in a service model capacity. But overall, I felt our best chance for success in the long term would be to model the team in an embedded fashion. And that would take time and tremendous team growth, because we obviously had way fewer researchers, just myself, than we did product teams. And so in order to gain the needed resources, in order to grow an embedded UX research team, we needed to prove ourselves. Unfortunately, I wasn't in an environment where I could just come in and make demands. So I would really need to focus on building credibility, showing strong value, and evangelizing our impact. My strategy was to take a consensus building approach and work in a bottom-up fashion to demonstrate our value to stakeholders and executives. I've broken down our growth into 7 stages that show how we grew to become fully embedded and successfully achieve my vision. And these 7 stages lay out the strategy for our team's growth. I started by having us fulfill the initial expectations for our team, and then expanding upon those expectations, allowing us to then hire before evangelizing and growing further, and finally specializing roles within our team. And as I walk through each stage, I challenge you to notice what's changing and to think about the underlying factors at play for each situation. Think about why I made the decisions I did, and then we'll come back to these at the end of my talk. Stage 1 of our growth was to fulfill expectations and partner with our design team, as I was brought on to do, to integrate user feedback throughout the design process. The good news was that our designers were highly invested in integrating research into their processes and decision-making. Fortunately, I had the option of bringing on a free resource early on, a team member from customer support who I welcomed to the team as a junior researcher and had the opportunity to mentor. And together, we began a weekly rolling studies program, which was focused on lean, rapid testing of our designers' work. Here, I'm showing you how we work together in a service model capacity for our design team. Stage 2 was to expand expectations for UXR and to increase our impact. After a short time, our junior researcher took over the bulk of our design testing program. And this then gave me the ability to determine how we could expand our expectations and impact. By this time, I had realized that Lyft was a product-focused organization. Fortunately for us, UX research reported up to design, which reported up to the VP of product. Though our product VP was not very bought into user research at the time, and we would somehow need to gain credibility to get an in with our VP in order to secure headcount for our team. I figured that our best chance of doing so would be to work closely with our PMs, finding a way to integrate research into our fast-moving product cycle and showing value. So instead of trying to convince them through words, I invited them to participate in research that we were already doing. So while our designers were already actively participating in our weekly design research, we were able to lure PMs in as well by making it novel and interesting. I had begun a lean testing program called DITO, or DITO, Drivers in the Office. And that included drivers coming to our Lyft headquarters to participate in studies. Our most impactful DITO studies were those in which we actually then got into cars alongside of drivers to test out our new design prototypes. And word about these sessions spread quickly, so PMs were much more interested in attending these sessions as they were fun and exciting, and getting into cars with real drivers especially motivated those PMs who were reluctant to take the time out to participate in something new like research. So as a result, we could show our impact. PMs started seeing the benefits of user feedback for themselves by participating in the design testing. And through these quick studies, we were able to uncover many low-hanging fruit, which resulted in many design wins that were quick. This led to proving our value to PMs. And overall, it was important for us to run these ultra-fast studies initially. This allowed us to illustrate to PMs that research could successfully be integrated into the product cycle without significantly impacting their timelines. And taking time for research was worth their while. So with this gained credibility from PMs, I began to expand on their expectations. I began forming stronger relationships with them and learned what questions they had. I began answering those questions with other methods, such as surveys and user interviews, and that resulted in more insights-informed decisions. I also proactively took a priority topic for the company and started to do some exploratory and generative research around it. This resulted in journey maps and personas and fueled more foundational and strategic discussions, which helped shape future roadmaps. Overall, PMs began to see more of the value UX research could provide and wanted even more. And soon we had too many priority requests, and our PM's demands to our VP gave us the extra push we needed to secure headcount to hire another researcher. Through this point, we continued working in a service model, and we focused on separate functional areas of the business, one of us on design and the other on product. Stage 3 of our growth was to hire, given our newly attained headcount. And I had some big decisions to make about who to hire next. I asked myself, what resource would provide our largest opportunity for impact? Given many big product questions and opportunities, I needed someone who could independently conduct studies and immediately have a strong impact. I chose to hire a senior full-stack researcher or UX research generalist, someone who was experienced with a variety of methodologies under their belt. And my goal was for this researcher to lead 2 of our product areas while I led the other 2. So once we hired this third member of our team, we each worked in a service model, but for specific parts of the business. Our junior researcher continued to focus on providing an evaluative service for design, and our new senior researcher and I focused on specific product areas. And I continued to work with cross-functional leaders during planning to ensure that our insights were driving roadmaps and to determine, prioritize, and assign all projects across our team. So stage 4 was to evangelize. And at this point, we had uncovered many insights, including those with more widespread interest. And I was excited for our team to share them with the company. We had some big opportunities to get closer to my vision of successful UXR teams and have broad-reaching impact for the company. But how do you get permission to speak at your company's all-hands meeting? The Lyft mission statement is to improve people's lives with the world's best transportation. A focus on people's lives was always a large part of the Lyft vision, and our founders often spoke about our users' experiences at every company meeting. So I approached leaders to speak at various all-hands meetings and connected our work to the company mission, explaining the importance of how a specific study would be helpful for the company or that specific organization to hear, and to be able to grow user empathy. And then through these presentations, we also drove an awareness of our team, what we do, and demonstrated how we impacted product decisions through insights. This in turn solidified the idea that understanding our users and doing research was a fundamental part of making product decisions at Lyft. So stage 5 was to grow our team further. So at this point, a clear cycle began to emerge. As we grew the expectations for our team with our work, we had additional impact, and that impact led to more buy-in from leadership. Then, with the additional buy-in, I was able to land more resources to further grow our team, which then led to greater expectations and a continuation of the cycle. So given our success through this cycle, we landed additional headcount. I worked on hiring more full-stack research leads for each of our product areas to ensure that we had a dedicated go-to expert for each. And I also brought on a team member focused on research operations, as we were growing to a size where it would be much more efficient to centralize this function. And at this point, we continued to work in a similar model, but now with a dedicated research lead embedded with each of the main product areas and a centralized operations resource. Additionally, I had stopped doing research project work and focused primarily on leadership and management. Soon, as new Lyft product teams were being conceived, we were given headcount as researchers were being requested as one of their first team members. And so we were wanted as strategic partners from the start. So I continued growing the team in an embedded fashion. Stage 6 was to specialize. When growing a team in an embedded fashion, you often begin with a lot of UXR generalists. And at some point, it becomes really important to further diversify and to hire experts in specific areas. Given our success, I was able to negotiate headcount for adding some specialized service-based roles to our team. I hired our first quantitative UX researcher, as we found a strong need for more robust survey practices and quant expertise to work alongside our more qualitatively focused researchers. And this team member also came on board to run our newly created UX tracker survey. We had proactively created this survey as a way to provide the company with a top-level metric of user satisfaction for our products and services. And to replace our early rolling studies program, I started a new research sprints program called Listen and Learn. And this was aimed at product teams that lacked a dedicated UX researcher. This program was headed by a dedicated researcher and allowed us to continue to provide value to new product teams in a service capacity. So one of the exciting outcomes of this program was that it resulted in these teams seeing our value and then actually funding headcount for us to hire a dedicated UX researcher to work with their team. So from here, we began working in an embedded hybrid model of sorts, with embedded researchers for many of our cross-functional product teams and our quant and listen and learn program researchers working in more of a service capacity. And by then, we had reached stage 7, utilizing gained authority. We were finally at the point of having sustainably built our credibility and grown our influence. Woo, we did it! We had gained the authority to start calling some of the shots. So at this point, we had breadth in our coverage across various product areas, and now it was time to ensure depth. To reach my vision of having consistent, broad-reaching impact across the company, I wanted to ensure that our team had bandwidth to answer the bigger, more strategic company questions. And so I met with each of our product and design executives to negotiate 30% of our UX research roadmap to be focused on proactive and strategic foundational research. We were also able to start democratizing some research. Due to our overwhelming number of smaller tactical research requests, we began coaching and advising team members, especially those who had lots of experience working with us already, with doing their own lightweight research. And as a result, researchers had more time to do in-depth research projects, which helped drive big decisions for our products. And we were able to do more of the strategic research that caught the attention of our executives. Soon, even C-level executives began seeking us out to conduct research to help them make big decisions for the company. In the meantime, our main product areas were also breaking down into more sub-teams. And as a result, I attained more headcount to hire multiple researchers within a single product area. I started promoting and hiring new managers for the team, and we also started hiring specialists, such as an ergonomics specialist for our bikes and scooters team. Overall, when hiring, I felt it was important to ensure diversity across our team and to hire people with different backgrounds and skill sets and at various levels. Some teams focus on just hiring senior researchers, but that's not my philosophy. Mentorship is important to me, and hiring at a variety of levels provides opportunities within the team for collaboration, learning, mentorship, and growth. So we finally arrived at being fully embedded with a hybrid mix of some service and democratized elements in the mix as well. And from here, the Lyft UX research team continues to grow and evolve today. So how we grew at Lyft is just one example of structuring a team. For the final parts of my talk, I'll walk you through how some other leaders structure their team to illustrate the diversity of options out there. And I'll wrap up by reviewing my key factors for consideration when growing your team. So companies such as Facebook, Instagram, and Google are well known for having grown large UX research teams in an embedded fashion. And there, the expectation is for researchers to function as equal partners within cross-functional product teams. And overall, research there is a part of the company culture and integrated into their daily work processes. At NerdWallet in San Francisco, Carol Rossi, who's the UX research director, has grown her team in a hybrid embedded/service model. Similar to how leaders function in a service model, she works with the product and design leaders to determine what the most important questions are for her team to answer. However, she avoids some of the typical pitfalls of a service model by embedding each of her researchers within a specific product area. This is similar to how we at Lyft functioned before we became fully embedded. And the teams at Wealthfront and Zapier work on democratized models. Noam Siegel is the director of user research at Wealthfront. When he started, there was already an established practice of company team members doing their own research. So the expectation for Noam was to level up this practice for the company and to also create a formal function of research at the company. And so while he and his small team do some high priority studies, his primary focus is to educate and coach folks across the company to conduct impactful research. Jane Davis heads up the UX research team at Zapier. Similar to Wealthfront, she and her small team advise product and design teams to do their own research. However, they focus most of their time on conducting strategic research for executives. Jane created a research operations team specifically to focus on democratization. That way, her researchers could focus more on the strategic work. She reports to Zapier's chief product officer, who bought in to these expectations for the UX research team once she started. Based on these examples, we can see how company culture, expectations, and buy-in from leadership can really influence how teams work. This brings me to my final section and back to my 5 key factors. As I mentioned at the start of the talk, these are my go-to set of factors that I consider when building teams. For each factor, I have a list of questions I ask myself, and I'm going to share these with you so that you can use them to think about your current situation and team. Feel free to follow along using the worksheet I've provided for my talk. The first factor is expectations of UXR. When it comes to expectations for your team, what does leadership and other stakeholders expect from UXR? What do they understand about UXR? And what resources are available to you and your team, such as budget and headcount? When it comes to work and collaboration processes at your company, how do people and teams get work done? What is the pace of work? How is research best integrated? And how can you ensure that insights inform decisions? When it comes to organizational structure at your company, how is your company structured? Where does UXR sit in the organization? And how does this affect your ability to influence? Keep in mind that where a team sits in the org chart doesn't necessarily restrict their ability to influence or impact. When it comes to leadership and buy-in at your company, how are strategic product and business decisions made? How does leadership view UX research? And how much buy-in do you have with leadership? Finally, when it comes to company culture for your workplace, are users truly a key part of your company's mission in action, not just in words? Are there any top-level company metrics focused on user satisfaction or happiness? And finally, do execs and stakeholders focus on users in their communications? When I started at Lyft, each of these factors had influence around our ability to achieve my vision for broad-reaching impact. When it came to expectations when I started, we were far from my vision, as the expectations for our team were narrow in scope. And in order to achieve my vision of broad-reaching impact, we needed to expand expectations around our scope. We accomplished this by gradually collaborating with more and more stakeholders and demonstrating the wide range of our capabilities. When it came to work processes, we were decently positioned when I began, as Lyft was a highly collaborative company. And in order to move closer to achieving my vision, we needed to integrate research throughout the product lifecycle and beyond. And we did this by embedding researchers into each team and overall being seen as essential cross-functional partners. When it came to organizational structure, the UX research team began towards the bottom of the org chart with a large gap away from executives. And to reach my vision of broad impact, we needed to work our way towards the top by expanding our realm of influence and cultivating relationships with leadership. Evangelizing our work and its impact was a key part in gaining visibility and moving closer to leadership. And while there was buy-in for UX research from leadership from the start, they had a limited view of its function. We grew our buy-in from leadership by first demonstrating our impact for design and product decisions, and then eventually providing strategic insights at the executive level to help drive larger company decisions. This led to leadership championing our team and seeking out our insights. And finally, with company culture, we capitalized on our company mission, which had already provided the company with a strong user focus. Every team having a researcher and research being a major part of decisions solidified the idea that understanding our users was table stakes for our business strategy. So when I began, we started far from my vision, especially when it came to expectations, organizational structure, and buy-in from leadership. But after almost 5 years, we were able to make lots of headway to achieving my vision of having consistent, broad-reaching impact across the company. And much of that is due to how we dynamically modeled, structured, and grew our team through our 7 stages of growth. So in closing, when it came to building the UX research team at Lyft from 1 to 30, many things had to come together, including a lot of luck. Many startups fail, and fortunately, Lyft had what it took to IPO and grow into a large international business. And that provided the potential for the UX research team to also grow in size. But I don't define success by the size of a team. To me, success for UX research teams is achieved when you've been able to have broad-reaching impact for the company. I aim for UX research teams to provide strong value across design and product teams, as well as the larger business. As leaders, our decisions around modeling, structuring, and growing our teams can greatly influence our success. And as you've seen here, there are a variety of ways for you to successfully model how your teams work. Keep in mind that the model that works best for your team may change as the landscape of your company and your team evolve. So whether you're currently a team of 1 or many, I encourage you to periodically step back and assess how to best ensure success for UXR at your company. Take some time to think about your vision for success. What needs to change in order for your team to be successful? And how will you do it? I encourage you to take action and let me know how it went. I'd love to hear from you. I wanted to say thank you to these leaders for sharing their stories and providing input for this talk. And thank you also to the UXR Collective for bringing us all together in even the most challenging of times. And thank you all for listening. Be well and stay safe.